Welcome, fact seekers. Bring your coffee and let's get into this deep dive.
All right.
Today, we are zooming in on one of the most mind-bending spots on the Giza Plateau, right next to that iconic Sphinx. It's the Valley Temple of Khafre, and we've got a mystery brewing.
Absolutely. And this isn't just, another old building. The Valley Temple is packed with peculiar details that have had researchers scratching their heads for ages.
So what are we drawing on today? Where's this info coming from?
Well, our exploration today pulls together some incredible resources. We've got the detailed 3D models from the Digital Giza project, which are amazing.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
Then there's ground-level views from Ancient Ice Odyssey on TikTok, architectural breakdowns by ancient architects on YouTube, historical context from Novia Online.
Okay.
The solid facts on Wikipedia, naturally alternative viewpoints from Megalithomania UK on YouTube, the visual journeys of Spirit and Stone, also YouTube, and some on-the-ground reporting from the Not-So-Innocents Abroad.
What a lineup. Now, for anyone picturing this in their mind, the Valley Temple is practically a neighbor to the Sphinx, right?
Right, next door. And it used to be connected straight to Khafre's pyramid via a walkway, a causeway.
Gotcha. And it's considered one of the most ancient and just plain weird structures sitting there on the Giza Plateau.
It really is. Unique.
And today, our mission is to really dig into what makes this temple so special, even if you've never picked up a trowel in your life. We want to uncover its secrets and maybe even stumble upon some new questions.
Exactly. Let's start with how this incredible place even came back into our awareness. Because for millennia, the Valley Temple was actually hidden.
Hidden?
Completely buried under the shifting sands of the Giza Plateau. It wasn't until 1852 that the French archaeologist Auguste Mariette, leading an excavation, unearthed this remarkably preserved structure.
Wow, 1852, so it was just covered up.
Yep. Think about it, an entire temple shielded from the elements for thousands of years, just waiting to be rediscovered. That sand blanket is a huge reason why so much of it is still around today.
Wow, talk about an archaeological jackpot. So when they finally brushed away all that sand, what did they find? What does this ancient temple actually look like?
Architecturally, the Valley Temple has a very distinct vibe. Its walls are made of huge limestone blocks, and they stretch for about 45 meters.
Okay.
Now, here's a cool detail. The thickness of these walls actually gets smaller as they go up.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Well, it kind of gives the temple this solid, almost blocky appearance, a bit like an ancient mastaba. Imagine a flat-roofed rectangle with sloping sides.
Got it. So not your typical pointy-top temple, more like a super sturdy ancient bunker.
That's a great way to picture it. And get this. Originally, both the inside and the outside of these limestone walls were completely covered in smooth, polished red granite.
Whoa, red granite.
Yeah. Imagine the contrast, the lighter limestone at the core with this vibrant, reddish, gleaming granite facing. And underfoot, a floor made of pure white alabaster.
Alabaster floors and granite walls. It must have been stunning. Seriously impressive. So how did people actually get into this monumental building?
There were a few key entry points. The main ones were on the eastern wall, where you'd find two doorways.
Two on the east.
Then on the western side, there was a single entrance, and this one led straight into a hall with a T-shape.
A T-shaped hall.
Yeah.
What was the deal with that design? Was it common?
Not quite like this. This central hall was clearly a very important space. Archaeologists have found 23 distinct bases within it.
23.
Yep. And these would have once held statues of King Khafre himself. In fact, one of the most famous images we have of Khafre, that stunning diorite statue that's now in the Cairo Museum.
Oh, I know the one, with the falcon behind his head.
That's the one. It was actually discovered right here in this hall.
No way. So a hall filled with statues of the big boss himself, like an ancient royal gallery.
Precisely. And in a curious similarity to the pyramids nearby, the Valley Temple doesn't have any paintings or inscriptions on its walls.
Really? None at all.
Yeah.
That seems odd for Egyptians.
It is. It's very stark. However, holding up the roof of this T-shaped hall, which would have been incredibly heavy, were 16 massive square pillars made of red granite.
16 granite pillars.
Yeah.
Still red granite.
Still red granite. And what's really amazing is that many of these granite pillars are still standing today.
That's incredible. The scale of this place is just mind-boggling. And how did they light up such a huge windowless-sounding space?
The lighting in the statue hall would have been quite dramatic. The builders incorporated small, slot-like windows high up in the walls.
Slot windows, like arrow slits.
Kind of, but for light. These weren't big picture windows. They were narrow openings carefully positioned so that beams of sunlight would stream in and specifically illuminate the statues of Khafre.
Oh, wow.
Picture these powerful figures being highlighted by these focused rays of light. It must have been an incredibly awe-inspiring sight.
That's such a vivid image. Now, we know it's made of stone, but we've heard these are some serious honking big stones. Just how massive are we talking?
We are talking truly megalithic. The core of the temple is constructed from enormous limestone blocks.
Limestone core, granite facing.
Right, exactly.
No.
And some of these limestone blocks are estimated to weigh anywhere from 100 to 150 tons or even more.
150 tons each.
Some of them, yeah. And these colossal stones were lifted over 40 feet into the air to build the temple. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around the engineering feats required, to move and place stones of that size with the technology we think they had back then.
Seriously.
Right.
It makes you wonder how they even managed it. Now, were these megastones all in perfect condition when they were discovered?
Well, that's another interesting point. There's evidence to suggest that the original limestone blocks that form the main structure are actually more weathered.
More worn down.
Yeah, more weathered than the red granite-facing stones that cover them.
Huh. What does that mean?
Well, it's led some researchers, like John Anthony West and Robert Schoch, to propose a really intriguing idea that the limestone core might actually be older and that King Khafre might have come along later and sort of renovated it.
Renovated.
Or maybe added the granite to an existing structure.
Whoa. So Khafre might have been more of a redecorator than the original architect? That kind of flips the script.
It certainly challenges the standard timeline. What else can we learn from how these giant blocks were put together? Because the lifting is one thing, but the fitting,
Right, the fitting.
the precision of the stonework is just mind-blowing. These blocks are fitted together with such incredible accuracy that it's been described as a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle.
A 3D jigsaw with 100-ton pieces.
Exactly. Some of these stones have multiple exposed surfaces, all with different angles and corners, and they fit together so perfectly it's as if they were molded or even bent to slot right into place.
Molded stone. Bent. That sounds like something out of science fiction. But it really makes you wonder about the skills they had.
It's a level of craftsmanship that seems almost impossible, even with today's technology.
And this level of detail leads us to one of the biggest mysteries of the Valley Temple, right? The enigmatic black stone.
You got it. This is a really strange one. On the inner eastern wall of the temple, right at the base level, the lowest course of stones,
Okay.
there's a single, very large block made of black granite.
Black granite. But you said the walls were faced with pink granite.
Exactly. That's what's odd. The rest of that wall is constructed from that pinkish-red granite, which we know came all the way from Aswan, hundreds of miles away. But this one block is black granite.
And where did the black granite come from?
That's also a bit unclear, possibly Aswan too, but why just one block? And what's even stranger is that this black block actually sticks out slightly from the surface of the pink granite. It doesn't sit flush with the rest of the wall.
So it's like someone just stuck a different colored block in there and it doesn't quite fit. That sounds deliberate, or at least a really strange mistake.
It looks very deliberate. Has anyone figured out why it's there?
Yeah, what's the theory?
Well, nobody has a definitive answer, and that's what makes it so intriguing. It almost looks like it was inserted after the main wall was already built.
Inserted later.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The eastern wall of the temple, the one with this black stone, apparently aligns precisely with the northern meridian of what some have called the gateway to the underworld.
A gateway to the underworld.
Okay.
That sounds super mysterious. What does that even mean in the context of ancient Egypt?
Well, in ancient Egyptian beliefs, certain places or alignments were considered symbolic or maybe even actual entry points to the afterlife, duat, or the realm of the gods.
Right.
The fact that this wall with this very odd black stone lines up with this significant directional concept is what makes its placement so potentially important.
So could this black block be marking something?
Or even concealing something. Could it be covering a hidden entrance to some kind of subterranean passage? It's a wild thought, but...
But given the location and the alignment.
Exactly. And given that the area around the temple has been used as a cemetery for centuries and excavations right there are restricted, this black stone remains a tantalizing clue to what might lie beneath.
A secret passage behind a mysterious black stone linked to the underworld. This is getting seriously Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the pink granite came all the way from Aswan. That's a serious road trip for giant rocks.
Oh, it was an immense undertaking. Aswan is about 850 kilometers south of Giza, just transporting those massive quantities of granite across that distance in ancient times. It was a logistical nightmare we can barely imagine.
Yeah, how do they even do that? Barges?
Probably barges at the Nile for most of it, yeah, but still, the sheer weight and volume and the craftsmanship they achieved with this granite is also incredible.
Absolutely. And as the folks at Ancient Ice Odyssey on TikTok pointed out, there's a really specific detail about how they work this granite, right? Something about the corners.
Yes, exactly. They highlighted the smooth, almost rounded corners on these massive granite blocks.
Rounded corners on granite.
Yeah, this isn't a rough, angular construction. These rounded edges are a hallmark of the stonework in the Valley Temple and demonstrate a very high level of skill in cutting and shaping this incredibly hard stone. It gives the temple a very distinct and almost softened, harmonious aesthetic, despite its massive scale.
So it wasn't just about fitting them perfectly, but also about the finish, the feel of it.
Precisely. And that precision, that quality of the granite masonry isn't just about looks. It's a key reason why the temple has survived for so long. It's incredibly durable.
Smooth, rounded corners on granite that's harder than steel. That's not what you'd expect from simple tools. Does this kind of advanced stonework show up anywhere else around Giza or in Egypt?
It does indeed. The Valley Temple shares a very distinctive architectural style, including this precision stonework with the nearby Sphinx Temple.
The one right next to the Sphinx.
Right next door, yeah. And if we look further south, we see similar techniques used at the Osirian in Abydos.
The Osirian, right? Another megalithic mystery.
Exactly. These three sites, Valley Temple, Sphinx Temple, Osirian, they stand out for their incredible detail and a level of stonework that many experts struggle to fully explain within the conventional timeline of ancient Egyptian history.
So these aren't just isolated examples of skilled building. It's a pattern at certain key locations.
It seems to be, and it gets even more intriguing. Some researchers have even drawn comparisons between the stonework of the Valley Temple and the incredibly complex stone walls found at ancient sites in South America.
South America? Like where?
Places like Ollantaytambo, Cusco, and Machu Picchu in Peru, specifically thinking about the Coricancha Temple in Cusco.
Wait, Peru? How could there be a connection?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? It makes you wonder, is it just a coincidence that these seemingly unconnected cultures developed such similar and incredibly precise stone-fitting techniques? Or could it hint at some much older, perhaps even global connection, an ancient shared culture?
A global connection in ancient stonework. That's a mind-blower. Now, let's circle back to the age of the Valley Temple itself. We've touched on the idea it might be older than Khafre. What's the main evidence for that idea again?
Okay, so a primary reason why many independent researchers believe the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple predate Khafre by a significant margin is the source of the limestone used to build them.
Right, the limestone blocks.
It's quite clear that these massive limestone blocks were quarried directly from the area surrounding and, crucially, in front of the Sphinx.
Right, that makes perfect sense. If you're building with stone taken from around the Sphinx had to be there first for you to dig around it. It seems logical.
Precisely. So if the Sphinx was already there, when was it made? And that's where Robert Shook's geological dating comes in.
The water erosion guy.
Yeah, suggesting the Sphinx could be around 10,000 years old based on those rainfall erosion patterns, not wind erosion.
10,000 years. So
Yeah.
way older than Khafre.
Much older. And if Shosh is right, then it logically follows that the Valley Temple, built with material excavated from the same area, would also have a much earlier origin than the conventional dating that links it solely to Khafre in the 4th dynasty.
Okay, that's compelling. Anything else linking them in time?
Yes, there's Khafre's causeway, that walkway connecting his pyramid to the Valley Temple. It actually forms the southern boundary of the Sphinx enclosure,
Oh, right.
which strongly suggests that the two structures, the Sphinx and the Valley Temple, are contemporary with each other. They seem to have been planned or built in relation to each other, and therefore potentially older than Khafre.
And doesn't the inventory stela, that ancient inscription, also throw a wrench in the traditional timeline of the Sphinx and the pyramids?
Yes, the inventory stela is another piece of evidence. It's controversial, of course, but many researchers interpret it as indicating that the Sphinx was already in existence before the time of Khafre, and even his father, Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid. It describes Khufu finding the Sphinx and needing to repair it.
Finding it, not building it.
That's what the stela seems to say.
So we've got geological evidence, the literal source of the building blocks, the causeway layout, and potentially even ancient writings, all pointing towards a much older age, for the Valley Temple and the Sphinx than what we typically learn in textbooks. It really makes you rethink things.
It absolutely does. And there are other related ideas too. Andrew Collins suggests Khafre's Causeway and the Valley Temple were some of the first monuments on the plateau, because the causeway is located quite far west compared to where the Nile's ancient shoreline would have been.
Implying they were built when the water was further away.
Or perhaps just very early in the site's development.
Right.
Also, there are enormous cyclopean blocks even in Khafre's pyramid itself, suggesting maybe that structure incorporates older elements too.
And didn't you mention something similar about the Great Pyramid?
Right. Even in the Great Pyramid, in the lower courses of the core masonry, there are these interlocking granite blocks, very similar in style to the Valley Temple, which could push the origins of that kind of construction back even further.
So the whole timeline could be way off.
That's the alternative theory, yeah. Some researchers propose a whole different sequence. Giza might have started with a natural hill, maybe the Wall of the Crow, the House of Sokar, ancient Rostov. Then came perhaps the Sphinx, Khafre's pyramid core, the Valley Temple, the Sphinx Temple, maybe linked with secrets behind that black stone.
Wow.
And then the Great Pyramid was constructed later, perhaps incorporating an existing worked natural hill. The builders, sometimes called the Zep Tepi or first-time people, might have been survivors from the end of the last ice age, encoding advanced knowledge in this huge, geometrically aligned sacred landscape.
That's a lot to take in. A completely different story of Giza.
It is. It's a fascinating, though less mainstream perspective.
Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive into the Valley Temple, it's clear this isn't just some old pile of rocks, not by a long shot.
Definitely not.
The sheer scale of the megalithic blocks, the almost impossible precision of the stonework, that super strange black granite block, and the growing evidence suggesting a much older age than conventionally accepted. It all adds up to a seriously compelling mystery.
It really does keep you guessing.
So here's a thought for you, our listeners, to chew on. Given all this, what does the existence of the Valley Temple really tell us about the people who built it, their technology, and the timeline of ancient civilizations, not just in Egypt, but maybe even across the globe?
Big questions.
And what secrets could that unexplained black stone still be guarding down there? It definitely makes you want to grab a map and start exploring the Giza Plateau for yourself, or at least dive into more research online.